Let's talk about money. There are mistakes that can cost you everything. Most of these mistakes happen early, quietly, and without warning. Here's something that surprises a lot of business owners. Who could run the business? Who does what? Who makes what decisions? Who controls what? If it's not written, it doesn't exist. Who has access to the accounts? Who knows where the contracts are? Who can sign checks? What happens if somebody dies? What happens if somebody wants out? Are my employees and contractors classified correctly? And what legal risk am I not seeing? How you avoid becoming the next case study. What if I told you most business failures aren't because of bad ideas, they're not because of the market, and they're not because of competition. They're because of legal mistakes that could have been prevented. I've seen business making millions collapse overnight. Partnerships that look perfect end in lawsuits. Entrepreneurs lose everything, not because they didn't work hard, but because they didn't set up things right from day one. That's the scary part. Most of these mistakes happen early, quietly, and without warning. Today, I'm breaking down the biggest legal mistakes I see as a business attorney, and more importantly, how you avoid becoming the next case study. Welcome back to the Marty Davis Show, where we turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones for business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm Marty Davis, business lawyer, entrepreneur, and your host. Today is a solo episode, and I want to give you something extremely practical. Because whether you're just starting out, scaling, or already successful, there are mistakes that can cost you everything. Let's start with one of the most common and most expensive mistakes: choosing the wrong business structure. Most people do one of these three things. They pick the cheapest option, they copy what a friend did, or worse, they don't set up anything at all. They just start operating. Here's the problem. Your entity is not just paperwork. It determines how you're taxed, how you're protected, and what happens if something goes wrong. I've seen people run businesses in their personal name, and when something goes wrong, they don't just lose their business, they lose their house, their savings, and everything they built because there was no legal separation. The right move? They don't pick an entity based on convenience. You pick it based on risk, growth plans, tax strategy, and ownership structure. Are you a U.S. person? Are you a person who is going to follow up and do all of the requirements that certain structures need? Be honest with yourself. Make certain that you set up that structure, whether it be a C corporation, an S corporation, an LLC, a sole member LLC, or simply a sole proprietorship that best suits your needs. And how do you determine that? With the help of an experienced professional. 3 questions every business owner should ask their attorney before selecting a corporation, an LLC, or a partnership. Ask these 3 questions. Number 1, what happens if someone sues me? Number 2, what happens if I bring on an investor or a partner? Number 3, what happens if I want to sell the business? Most people only focus on starting the company. They never think about growth, liability, or exit strategies. A structure that works today may become a problem 2 years from now. If your attorney can't explain those 3 scenarios clearly, keep asking questions until you understand them. Because the structure you choose today affects everything that happens in the future. The 12 contracts every business needs. Here's a hard truth. Most people don't read contracts, and many businesses don't even have the right ones. I say this all the time, and it's something we talk about in real estate as well as any business. The contract determines the outcome. If it's wrong, everything that follows can go wrong. Every business should have core contracts like operating agreements, shareholder agreements, client agreements, vendor agreements, employment agreements, independent contractor agreements, non-compete, non-solicitation agreements, NDA, non-disclosure agreements, partnerships agreements, and more depending on your industry and the type of business. Here's the mistake. People either download templates online, copy contracts for someone else, or now they use AI to generate them, or do a combination of all of them. Let me be very clear. A bad contract is worse than no contract at all. Pull out one contract right now. I want you to do something practical. Pull out your most important contract. Maybe it's a client agreement, maybe it's a partnership agreement, maybe it's a vendor contract. Now look for these three things. What happens if someone doesn't pay? What happens if somebody wants out? What happens if there's a dispute? If those questions aren't crystal clear, that's where problems start. Most lawsuits happen because people assume the contract says something that it doesn't. Don't assume. Verify. Because it gives you a false sense of security when there is none. Let me give you an example. I recently had a client who sold their business. They were paid out in that business as products were made and sold. Unfortunately, the buyer of the business never told the seller when those products were sold and delayed payment once the seller found out when those products were in fact sold. In the contract, there were no penalties for the buyer for late payment, and in fact, the contract was written so they had to have a nice conversation period, which lasted 30 days to try and work out the detail. Then they had to go to mediation. That's another 30 days. And at that point, they could file a lawsuit against the buyer for failure to meet the requirements of the contract. All of that delayed things by 60, 90, or 120 days, all of which they had to pay a lawyer to do and couldn't get back their fees. Big mistakes in contracts that give you a false sense of security and really cost you.
Injectables aren't about changing how you look. They're about understanding what's possible. Let's make this simple. Botox and Dysport are neuromodulators. They relax specific muscles to soften expression and wrinkles. They don't freeze your face when used correctly. They refine your movement and expression. Fillers like Juvederm restore volume that time and gravity have taken. In areas like cheeks, lips, the jawline, and the under eye. Sculptra is in a category of its own. It's a collagen biostimulator. Rather than adding volume directly, it triggers your body to produce its own collagen over time in a slow, more natural looking rebuild. Knowing which tool is right for each individual problem is the entire art of injectable medicine. It's never one size fits all. The goal of injectable medicine, done right, is that no one knows you did anything. They just think you look better. If you want to learn more about injectable medicine, reach out to us here at Bodywell.
AI contract mistakes. AI is so powerful, but AI doesn't understand your business, your risk, your jurisdiction, your long-term goals, and AI gives you generic answers. But business law is not generic. I've reviewed AI-generated contracts that miss critical clauses, use the wrong legal language, or create loopholes that destroy protection. And the business owner thinks they're covered until something goes wrong. Use AI for ideas, but never for final legal protection. Let me give you an example. Florida courts, at least in South Florida, require all lawyers to indicate when they use AI to perform any pleading, any agreement. The court doesn't believe in AI agreements. Why should you? Here's something that surprises a lot of business owners. Not every signed contract is enforceable. I can't tell you how many times someone says, "Marty, they signed it." My next question is, did the right person sign it? If you're signing with a company, make sure the person signing actually has authority to bind that company. If you're signing electronically, make sure you're keeping proper records. And if you're signing a major agreement, verify exactly who the parties are. A signature is important, but who signed it can even be more important. I've seen businesses spend thousands enforcing contracts against people who never had authority to make the deal in the first place. Make certain the person signing is the person with authority. Financing and capital mistake. Let's talk about money, because this is where a lot of entrepreneurs get into trouble. The mistake: not securing enough or the right type of financing or investment. There's a big difference between debt, equity, investors, strategic partners, and if you don't structure it correctly, you can lose control of your company, give away too much equity, or create legal obligations you can't meet. I've seen founders build something incredible and then realize they don't actually own it anymore. The key: structure the deal before you need the money. Structure the protections before you need to have them. If you don't have intellectual property set up, if you don't have the protections of a written contract, you are going to be behind the eight ball in case something happens. You need a professional to help you work that through, and that's not AI. Here's a question that surprises a lot of business owners. Do you actually own your logo, website, content, and brand? Most people immediately say yes, but then we start looking at who created it. Was it a marketing company, a freelance designer, a website developer, an employee, or an independent contractor? Just because you paid something doesn't automatically mean you own it. I've seen businesses spend years building a brand only to discover they never secured the rights to the logo, the website, videos, or content they paid someone else to create. If your business relies on your brand, make sure ownership is clearly documented. The value of your company isn't just what you sell, it's what you own. Employees versus partners. My favorite topic. This one destroys relationships in businesses. Not understanding the differences between an employee, an independent contractor, partners. I've seen businesses where they're concerned that they don't have the money, where they treat people like partners, and really those partners were employees. Partners treated like employees and contractors misclassified completely. Each one of these has different rights, different risks, and different liabilities. And when it's done wrong, you get lawsuits, tax penalties, ownership disputes. Clarify up front saves everything later. So let me give you a couple of examples. I had a client who really wanted to bring on a partner. So I talked to them more about, well, what were their reasonings? Why was that person the perfect partner for their business? And why weren't they an employee? Well, they told me he has expertise. And I said, is that expertise that you don't have? And she said, no, we have similar expertises. And I said, well, is he bringing something unique to your business that you couldn't get by just paying an employee? And she said, no. And so we talked more and more, and she didn't have to give up that equity. She didn't have to give up that control. And she just needed the comfort and confidence to say, I can afford to pay this person as an employee and not share profits with them as a partner. We saved her a big chunk of business. Her business grew. She's far more wealthy today because she took on employees, not partners. Before you give somebody ownership in your business, ask yourself 4 questions. Can I hire them instead? Can I pay them a bonus instead? Can I use a consultant instead? Or can I use a profit-sharing arrangement instead? Because once you give away equity, you're not just sharing profits, you're sharing control. And in many cases, there are other ways to reward great people without giving away part of the company. Ownership is one of the most valuable assets you'll ever have. Protect it carefully.
This show is brought to you by
Here at Bodywell, we focus on advanced aesthetic treatments paired with longevity testing for a comprehensive approach to your health and well-being. This is Bodywell. Come see what's possible.
Do you have the 12 contracts every business should have? I'm attorney Marty Davis. For more than 40 years, I've helped Florida businesses solve legal problems with practical, business-minded strategies. Visit LegalSolutionsGRP.com. Put our experience to work for you. Books and financial structures. Another silent killer. Not setting up your books correctly. If your numbers aren't clean, you can't scale, you can't sell, you can't raise capital, and legally, it creates exposure because you're never mixing personal and business funds. You can't prove what belongs to whom, and you lose legal protection. Clean books equals legal protection plus growth. Let me give you an example. You know, most small businesses today start with QuickBooks. It's a great program. It's available everywhere. There's all kinds of tech support for it. It's a great tool for small business. It helps you categorize things correctly. But if you don't use it correctly, it's like having nothing. Make certain you set up that separate bank account. Make certain that you get a QuickBooks program to classify every dollar that goes into that checking account, that savings account, or that operating account or payroll account, so that it's clear to you, it's clear to your bookkeeper, it's clear to your CPA, and it will then be clear to anyone who, when you want to sell that business, gives you the most money for your business. The 60-second legal audit. I'll give you a quick legal audit. Do you have a separate business bank account? Do you have updated contracts? Do you have a current operating agreement? And do you know who owns your intellectual property? Also, do you know who has access to sensitive company data? If you answered no to any of these questions, write it down. That's where I'd start. The biggest legal risk are usually the ones sitting right in front of us. Roles and responsibilities. You know, this is simple, but it's one that causes massive problems. Not clearly defining responsibilities. Who does what? Who makes what decisions? Who controls what? If it's not written, it doesn't exist. And when conflict happens, everybody remembers things differently. But when it's put in writing early, during that honeymoon period, it's perfect. Everyone understands what their responsibilities are, who's in charge for taxes, who's in charge for personnel, and how people are going to be compensated, and what's going to happen if there is a problem that occurs in the business. How do you settle disputes? How do you settle outside disputes? And how do you handle vendors who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing? It's all important. Schedule those roles, set them up properly so that mistakes aren't made in the future and the memories of all of your partners and employees are preserved. If you have partners, schedule one meeting every year. Not to talk about growth, not to talk about sales, talk about worst-case scenarios. What happens if somebody dies? What happens if someone gets divorced? What happens if somebody wants out? And what happens if someone stops working? Most partnership disputes happen because nobody had those conversations early. One uncomfortable meeting can save years of conflict. Licensing and compliance. This is a mistake people don't think about until it's too late. Not meeting licensing requirements, industry regulations, local compliances. You can get fined, you can get shut down, or lose your ability to operate in that area of business. Compliance isn't optional. It's part of doing business. Here's a question every business owner should ask themselves. If something happened to me tomorrow, who could run the business? Who has access to the accounts? Who knows where the contracts are? Who can sign checks? Who can make decisions? Most businesses are built around one person, and that's fine until that person becomes unavailable. Whether it's an illness, an emergency retirement, simply taking or vacation. Your business should be able to function without you. A business continuity plan isn't just for large corporations. It's for anyone who has employees, customers, contracts, or family members depending on that business. The strongest businesses aren't just built to grow, they're built to survive. Let's talk about some of those areas that need those strict compliances. Wealth management, insurance, banking, international trade. All of those things and many more require certain licenses and certain ways of doing business. And if you don't have an attorney who knows what they're doing in those areas, you put yourself at risk. Cybersecurity, it's what everybody's talking about. It's the modern risk. Most businesses think it won't happen to me until client data is exposed, financial accounts are hacked, or your systems are shut down. And now you have legal liability, you have reputation damage, you have financial loss. Protect what you own. Protect your data like you protect your money. So, let's look at this. There are so many ways that cybersecurity protects a business. It's not just that you don't click on something. It's what's on one of your employees' desk. Did they leave someone's social security number out there? Did they leave some personal data out there that someone can pick up and use against the business? What happens with a disgruntled employee if they had access to those types of data? And then look at your vendors. You know, you're responsible for data breaches from your vendors. So if they have sloppy systems, that's going to spill back on you. How to protect yourself, how to protect against lazy vendors, how to protect against the people in your organization that may not be quite as focused on security as you are. You need guidance, and that's so important today. Ask your vendor these 4 questions. Your business may be secure, but are your vendors? Ask them, how do you store my data? Who has access to my data? What happens if you're breached? And do you have cyber insurance? Many business owners never ask those questions until after a problem happens. But then it's too late. Remember, your vendor's mistakes can become your legal problem. What if your next corporate event didn't just entertain your team? What if it told your company's story? The Marty Davis Show brings our full podcast experience directly to your company. We interview your leadership, highlight your culture, and involve your employees as part of the live audience experience. One unforgettable event and months of powerful content your company can actually use. LinkedIn, recruiting, marketing, branding, and storytelling. Contact us today to bring the Marty Davis Show live to your company. If your company wants an event people will remember, let's create something extraordinary together. The Marty Davis Show Live, more than an event, a content experience. The big lesson here. If there's one thing I want you to take from today, it's that most legal problems are preventable, but they require planning, structure, and the right guidance. Make certain that you're taking the time to look at what your business is and how you need to protect it. Because in business, it's not just about making money, it's protecting what you've built. And the difference between success and a very expensive mistake is usually the things you didn't see coming. So, if you protected yourself as best you can, have those correct contracts, have the correct business structure, have the correct guidance, and maybe some help from consultants on cybersecurity, on the way that you do your books, and the way you keep your financial records, your business is on the way to extreme success, whether you're growing, whether you're acquiring, or whether you're setting it up to sell. All of those things make a big difference. You know, when we talk about setting up protections for your business, there are a number of experts that can help every business. And it's money well spent. It's not only the business lawyer, but it's the cybersecurity people. It's the financial people that you have, both wealth management, bookkeeping, and CPAs. Having the right CPA can save so much money and can save so much money in taxes. All of those things go directly into your pocket because every deduction, every credit is so important. And making certain that things are categorized correctly, making certain that you don't make mistakes in the cybersecurity area, and don't make mistakes in categorizing employees versus investors versus partners. And then when we talk about employees, are they salaried employees? Are they hourly employees? If you miscategorize that, it could be a huge cost to your business. Because if you have a labor suit and the employee wins, you have to pay their attorney's fees. It's not just paying some back wages or overtime. So look at all of those things. Make certain that you're doing things correctly, you're complying with local laws and the requirements of your industry, because what happens in the planning stage is reflected beautifully in when the money goes into your bank and into your pocket. Let me leave you with something special. At least once a year, every business owner should sit down with their attorney and ask 5 questions. What has changed in the law that affects my business? Are my contracts still current? Are my employees and contractors classified correctly? Has my liability increased as my company has grown? And what legal risk am I not seeing? Notice that last question, because the biggest legal problems are usually the one nobody is looking at. Your business changes every year. Your legal protection should change with it. A business review shouldn't happen after a lawsuit. It should happen before one. I'm Marty Davis, your host. If this has sparked some interest, sparked some information that you need to know, please follow us on other episodes where we bring experts in business to social media, through our podcast, and through our television shows. We provide real strategies and conversations with those experts that help you grow. So until next time, keep turning your stumbling blocks into stepping stones.
This show is brought to you by
Do you have the 12 contracts every business should have? I'm attorney Marty Davis. For more than 40 years, I've helped Florida businesses solve legal problems with practical, business-minded strategies. Visit LegalSolutionsGRP.com. Put our experience to work for you.
Here at Bodywell, we focus on advanced aesthetic treatments paired with longevity testing for a comprehensive approach to your health and well-being. This is Bodywell. Come see what's possible.
1, 2, 3, go!